Welcome to the most important financial briefing you will watch in May 2026. We are South Florida Home Finder team and we engineer wealth. For the next minutes, we are going to dismantle the emotional noise, the media panic, and the urban myths surrounding the South Florida real estate market. We are going to replace that noise with forensic data, structural economics, and institutional wealth strategies. The media wants you to believe that 2026 is a year of uncertainty. They want you to sit on the sidelines holding your cash while inflation slowly destroys your purchasing power. The truth is entirely different. The truth is that 2026 is the most mathematically advantageous year to acquire South Florida real estate in the last half decade. We are witnessing a structural anomaly. South Florida has officially transitioned from a transient retirement destination into a global corporate powerhouse. This is no longer a localized housing market. This is a finite asset class backed by international liquidity. We must look at the macroeconomic forces driving this reality. First, we have the Wall Street South integration. The corporate migration that began in 2021 was not a temporary pandemic trend. It was the first wave of a permanent infrastructure shift. Multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, private equity firms, and tech conglomerates have established permanent roots in Brickell, West Palm Beach, and Boca Raton. They did not just bring their executives, they brought their entire operational ecosystems. This creates a permanent floor on housing demand. High-earning professionals require premium housing, and they are consuming the inventory at a pace that builders simply cannot match. Furthermore, we are dealing with severe geographic scarcity. Look at a satellite map of South Florida. We are trapped between the Atlantic Ocean to the east and the protected Everglades to the west. We cannot build outward. We can only build upward or redevelop. This creates an environment of absolute finite supply. In any economic model, when you introduce aggressive compounding demand to a strictly finite supply, the result is systemic appreciation. Every single family home sitting on a plot of land in Broward, Miami-Dade, or Palm Beach County is a limited edition asset. You are not just buying a structure, you are acquiring a monopoly on a specific latitude and longitude that can never be duplicated. We must also factor in the 2026 tax landscape. Florida's 0% state income tax is acting as a massive equity subsidy for buyers relocating from high tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California. When a professional moves here, they experience an immediate 10 to 13% increase in their take-home pay. Smart money uses that tax delta to aggressively fund real estate acquisitions. The government is essentially financing their ability to pay premium prices for South Florida dirt. This creates a hyper-competitive environment for the best assets. To win in this environment, you cannot think like a traditional home buyer. You must think like a portfolio architect. You must understand how to leverage technical debt, how to execute geographic arbitrage, and how to force equity into an asset regardless of external market conditions. Let us perform an exhaustive diagnostic of the first primary pillar of this 2026 macro reality, the permanent institutionalization of South Florida, colloquially known as the Wall Street South phenomenon. When the corporate migration patterns first accelerated between 2021 and 2023, the consensus among traditional retail analysts was that this was a transient, reactive anomaly. They predicted that as the macroeconomy normalized, these major funds, family offices, and tech conglomerates would migrate back to their historical northern anchors. They were dead wrong. What we are witnessing in 2026 is not a temporary trend. It is the maturation phase of a permanent infrastructure injection. Multi-billion-dollar asset management firms, hedge funds, and private equity giants have not just opened satellite offices here.
They have built physical corporate fortresses in Brickell, downtown West Palm Beach, and the core corporate corridors of Doral and Boca Raton. When an institution transfers billions of dollars in assets under management to a new jurisdiction, they do not think in quarters, they think in decades. They invest heavily in physical security, private education infrastructure for their executives' families, and local political alignments. This massive wealth transfer has created a permanent structural floor under our local real estate market. The high-earning professionals, executive boards, and specialized operators who staff these enterprises do not look at housing as an emotional purchase. They look at it as a logistical necessity within their wealth preservation framework.
Let us move directly into Section 2 of this operational blueprint. This is where we execute a cold forensic execution of the single greatest psychological trap in modern real estate: the illusion of waiting for a better time. For nearly 3 years, the retail consumer market has been paralyzed by a singular, uneducated narrative: the belief that mortgage rates are too high and that the logical move is to sit on cash until interest rates return to the historical anomalies of the early pandemic era. In May 2026, this strategy is not just flawed, it is a form of financial self-sabotage. Let us perform an uncompromising mathematical audit of our current credit environment. As we film this masterclass in 2026, mortgage rates have firmly stabilized in the low 6% range. The retail market calls this expensive. The institutional architect calls this a return to historical normalization. The sub 3% mortgage rates witnessed in 2020 and 2021 were not a benchmark of economic health. They were an artificial emergency monetary intervention executed by central banks to prevent a total systemic collapse. Basing your 2026 acquisition strategy on a return to those figures is the equivalent of building a portfolio based on a statistical impossibility. When you choose to wait for interest rates to decline, you are operating under a catastrophic economic assumption. You are assuming that the physical asset price will remain completely static while you sit on the sidelines. Let us map out the real-world friction of this choice. In South Florida, due to the severe inventory compression we analyzed in Section 1, the baseline single-family and townhome market under $425,000 is moving at an aggressive velocity. If you choose to wait 12 to 18 months in the hope that rates drop from 6.2% to 5.2%, a massive wave of retail demand will simultaneously re-enter the grid. This is the velocity arbitrage trap. A 1% drop in interest rates instantly unlocks hundreds of thousands of qualified buyers who were previously disqualified by debt-to-income limits. When that pent-up demand floods a strictly finite inventory system, it triggers immediate aggressive bidding wars. In South Florida, this structural demand shock will drive asset prices up by 8 to 12% within a single multi-listing cycle. Mathematically, by attempting to save $150 to $200 a month on your debt service, you will force yourself to pay $40,000 to $50,000 more for the exact same physical asset. You can refinance a mortgage rate when macroeconomic cycles shift, but you can never refinance an inflated purchase price. You are voluntarily trading an permanent equity loss for a temporary interest rate optimization. Now, let us analyze the structural mechanics of real estate as a short position against fiat currency. In 2026, the structural debasement of the US dollar is an unalterable reality driven by systemic federal deficits and monetary expansion. When you hold your wealth in cash while waiting to time the market, your capital is actively bleeding purchasing power through non-transitory inflation. Conversely, when you execute a real estate acquisition utilizing a 30-year fixed-rate institutional loan, you are performing a highly sophisticated currency short. You are borrowing heavily inflated, high purchasing power dollars from the banking system today to secure a hard, finite, appreciating physical asset. You are then legally permitted to pay that institutional debt back over the course of 30 years using future heavily devalued dollars. Inflation actively erodes the real economic weight of your debt while simultaneously acting as an upward escalator for your rental income potential and the nominal value of your property. The bank absorbs the currency risk, you capture the asset appreciation. In the 2026 landscape, a fixed rate mortgage is not a liability. It is a wealth engineering tool that forces inflation to work as a direct subsidy for your net worth. Finally, we must look at how the current stabilization of 2026 has opened the golden negotiation window. Because the irrational, hyper-emotional bidding wars of the post-pandemic boom have dissolved into a structured, data-driven market, sellers have become entirely rational actors. We are currently utilizing this stabilization to execute plays that were completely impossible 3 years ago. At South Florida Home Finder, we do not simply accept listed prices. We perform comprehensive technical debt audits on every target property. We screen for capital expenditure liabilities, aging roofs, cast iron plumbing systems, out-of-spec HVAC units, and outdated electrical panels. Let us deploy our capital into Section 3. This is the operational engine of our masterclass where theory transforms into raw yield. In May 2026, wealth is not generated by doing what is popular. Popularity in real estate is a lagging indicator that points directly to a compressed cap rate and an inflated cost per square foot. To capture explosive equity, the institutional portfolio architect utilizes a high leverage process known as geographic arbitrage. This is the strict mathematical practice of identifying hyper-adjacent pricing inefficiencies where the physical distance between two submarkets is negligible, but the delta in acquisition cost per square foot is statistically massive. Let us execute a complete case study on the Doral-Fontainebleau anomaly. Traditional retail buyers drive blindly into Doral because they are chasing retail brand recognition. They pay premium retail pricing, absorb aggressive multifamily HOA fees, and subject themselves to a compressed cash-on-cash return. The forensic portfolio engineer operates on a completely different data plane. By tracking raw logistics, we look exactly one micro zip code adjacent to the south. Fontainebleau, let us run the structural audit. Fontainebleau shares the exact same infrastructure grid as Doral. It shares the exact same hyperconnectivity to the major economic arteries of South Florida, sitting immediately flanked by the Palmetto Expressway, SR 826, the Dolphin Expressway, SR 836, and less than 7 minutes from the logistics hubs of Miami International Airport. It taps directly into a highly resilient, non-cyclical tenant base driven by Florida International University, FIU, and the thousands of corporate logistics professionals staffing the airport corridor. Yet, when we look at the 2026 pricing index, Fontainebleau assets are trading at an absolute 25 to 30% discount per square foot compared to identical concrete assets across the boundary line in Doral. That price delta is your built-in equity shield. In real estate economics, capital acts like water. It always flows along the path of least resistance. When the price ceiling in a core submarket like Doral or Brickell reaches its absolute capacity limit, the excess domestic and international demand overflows directly into the nearest high connectivity basin. By acquiring assets in Fontainebleau today, you are shorting the overinflated retail brand and front-running the inevitable institutional capital spillover. Now, let us audit the broader South Florida map and analyze how we scale this exact same forensic strategy across Broward County. We look for the path of municipal progress and capital expenditure infill. We systematically monitor municipal budgets, commercial rezoning approvals, and transit-oriented development applications. This is why we are heavily focused on specific inland pockets of Pompano Beach, Coconut Creek, and key strategic zones within Hollywood. We look for areas undergoing structural transition. We look for the points on the grid where legacy commercial or industrial space is being aggressively reclaimed for mixed-use development, or where high-speed commuter rail systems are adding logistical nodes. The amateur buyer waits until the new high-end retail center is fully built and open before they buy. They are buying the finished product at peak price. The forensic investor buys the adjacent single-family or townhome concrete structure while the municipal permits are still pending approval. You want to acquire the dirt while the infrastructure is still an unexecuted capital budget item on a city planning document. For our primary acquisition target, securing resilient high-yield assets under or near the $425,000 threshold, our underwriting criteria are absolute. In 2026, we completely avoid bidding on pristine, emotionally staged homes. Emotional staging is a marketing premium designed to make buyers overpay for cosmetic finishes that depreciate the moment you close. Instead, we hunt exclusively for cosmetic distress with structural integrity. We look for high-resilience concrete block structures, CBS, built under strict modern engineering baselines, but suffering from severe layout obsolescence or deferred interior maintenance. These properties look terrible on consumer real estate applications, completely filtering out 90% of your retail competition. We underwrite the asset based on its raw structural volume, secure it below real market value, and deploy a hyper-efficient, standardized renovation protocol. We immediately harden the envelope, installing impact-rated windows, updating the electrical systems, and neutralizing the floor plan. Let us transition immediately into Section 4. This is the structural fortress of our masterclass. In South Florida's 2026 real estate ecosystem, an investor does not lose their wealth because they made a mistake in their rental yield projections. They lose their wealth because they failed to accurately underwrite the physical vulnerability of their asset. The single greatest operational cost threat to your cash flow in May 2026 is the structural insurance compression. If you buy an unhardened, unmitigated property, the soaring cost of your property, windstorm, and flood insurance policies will completely cannibalize your net operating income, NOI, and reduce your capitalization rate to zero. To build a portfolio that thrives under these macro conditions, we utilize a highly protective framework known as institutional portfolio hardening. This is the cold, systematic process of applying structural engineering data directly to your financial model to force a downward re-rating of your insurance risk profile. Let us execute a complete forensic audit on structural windstorm exposure. The amateur buyer looks at a roof and asks if it leaks. The forensic portfolio architect demands to see the wind mitigation inspection report and verifies the exact physical fastening method of the roof deck to the wall structure. To secure the maximum insurance credits available in 2026, the asset must possess a minimum of hurricane clips or wraps with a triple nail configuration, securing the trusses to the reinforced concrete tie beam. If the property utilizes legacy toenail connections, you are exposing your capital to an immediate 3 to 4-fold premium penalty. When we execute our renovation protocol under our target acquisition threshold, we don't just replace the roof covering. We re-nail the entire plywood deck using 8D ring shank nails spaced strictly at 6 inches on center. This creates a monolithic structural diaphragm that satisfies the absolute highest thresholds of the Florida Building Code. We eliminate the catastrophic risk of roof sheathing loss during a high-velocity hurricane event, and we force the insurance underwriting algorithms to slash your windstorm premiums by up to 40 to 50% on day one. Now, let us analyze the secondary structural layer. The physical envelope hardening. You must completely eliminate the use of traditional plywood shutter deployment. In 2026, manual shutters are an operational liability that depresses tenant valuation and increases corporate vacancy risk. Our underwriting model mandates the immediate installation of Miami-Dade certified high-velocity hurricane zone HVHV impact glass. Let us break down the physics of why this functions as a financial shield. Impact-resistant windows are engineered to withstand the direct kinetic impact of a 9-pound 2x4 timber traveling at 34 miles per hour. But more importantly for your balance sheet, they completely seal the atmospheric envelope of the building. In a severe windstorm event, if a single standard glass window shatters, high-velocity wind rushes inside the structure, creating an immediate catastrophic internal pressurization. This interior pressure pushes upward against the roof deck while the external low pressure pulls it from above, instantly tearing the roof off the structure. By installing impact glass, you permanently prevent internal pressurization, guarantee the survival of the asset, and unlock the highest tier of municipal and institutional insurance credits. Finally, we must confront the absolute reality of flood insurance and elevation economics. In May 2026, buying blindly inside a traditional FEMA special flood hazard area, such as flood zone AE or AH, without a strict elevation certificate is financial suicide. The implementation of Risk Rating 2.0 by FEMA has fundamentally transformed how flood insurance is priced. Premiums are no longer based on broad geographic zones. They are calculated using the exact forensic elevation profile of the individual structure relative to local water data. We utilize GIS data to target properties sitting on the high elevation oolitic limestone ridges of South Florida. We look for assets with a finished floor elevation, FFE, that sits substantially above the base flood elevation, BFE. If we underwrite an asset that requires flood coverage, we require a certified elevation certificate proving the structure is elevated. Every single inch of elevation above the baseline mathematically translates into a compounding reduction in your annual flood premium. By combining a high elevation ridge location, a triple nailed roof deck, and fully certified impact glass, we transform a historically vulnerable asset class into an institutional-grade, weather-resilient sovereign bunker. We have reached the ultimate threshold of this masterclass. What you have just witnessed is not a collection of theoretical real estate strategies. It is an active institutional operating blueprint for May 2026. The South Florida market has officially entered its most ruthless evolutionary phase, the era of the accidental investor, the person who buys a property blindly, puts up a generic listing, and prays for market appreciation is completely over. The current macro climate, driven by extreme insurance realities and strict capital parameters, is systematically wiping those amateurs out of the game. But for us, for the data-driven portfolio architects who operate with clinical precision, this exact same market represents the greatest wealth generation window of the decade. Remember the core tenets we proved today. We do not guess on location. We map logistical velocity and sub-market arbitrage. We do not pay the retail branding tax. We find functional obsolescence with perfect structural integrity. And we never, ever expose our principal capital to weather or expense volatility. We systematically harden our building envelopes to manufacture instant equity and lock in permanent cash flow. This is how you win. This is how you outnegotiate the entire retail market, isolate your principal from macroeconomic shifts, and build an ironclad real estate empire that prints money while others scramble. If you are a serious investor, an executive, or a capital partner looking to deploy wealth into the South Florida grid using this exact level of forensic underwriting, do not wait. The window to secure assets under our target baseline is compressing daily. Hit the link below right now to schedule a private portfolio evaluation with the South Florida Home Finder team. We will audit your capital strategy, run your numbers through our active risk multipliers, and show you exactly where the next unrefined bunker is waiting to be manufactured. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button, drop a comment with your thoughts on the Fontainebleau corridor, and share this masterclass with one person who needs to stop buying retail real estate. We are South Florida Home Finder team. Stay focused, stay disciplined, underwrite with pure data, and I will see you inside the next asset. Peace.